The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
The following program is closed captioned for the thinking impaired.
By tomorrow, I will rule the world!
You think he's gone? He's not gone. That's the whole point. He's never gone!
Is this some radical new therapy?
You see?
Well, I must have not been paying attention when you were just talking to me. Do you think that you could repeat the question and I listen more attentively? There must have been something in all of that nothing that wasn't quite so easy to see. And I must have missed something when you were just talking to me.
Unbelievable. It's almost like computers know when you're on the phone or when you're like in a public setting where like doing something like this, where just purposely nothing works the way it's supposed to, ever. All right, let's thank our sponsors. We got a big show to fill today. I want to thank Century 21 McLennan Real Estate, Zany Pesci Law Office, Marston and Son Construction, EIS Investigation and Gun Training, Tomo and Shaken Seafood, Clear Path for Veterans New England, AFC Urgent Care, Pleasant Valley Landscaping Contractors, Prime Insurance at Doug Mercurio Law Office, Chris's Barbershop on Main Street right here in Salem, New Hampshire, W3ON, and a free show to Stadium Chiropractic isn't that awful? JG's Ice Cream. I don't have it written down, but I pulled it from the cobwebs of my mind. And who did I miss? There's somebody else I missed in here, too. I usually give a free shout-out to somebody. All right, let's get this show on the road. Hi, how you guys doing? My name's Tom Duggan. If you're paying attention, podcast. Hi, atop Two Guys Smoke Shop at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. Couple things to get to today. I got my new co-host, Lenny Mirra, is with us, former state representative Lenny Mirra, one of the few smart people who've gone into the legislature and then gotten the hell out as quick as he possibly could. Although not because he wanted to, though. Couple of things to get to. First, I want to thank my attorneys at Malloy & Sullivan and Hingham, who were before the New Hampshire Supreme Court this morning, and we're looking forward to a big win on this. This is a First Amendment case. I'm going to talk a lot more about what the case is, I think, next week's show. And then next week, I think we're going to have an announcement. It's a kind of a sad announcement. Not really sad. It's kind of sad, though. It's like a moving on kind of thing. We're not going anywhere, though. Actually, technically, we are going somewhere, but don't worry. There's going to be a podcast. Don't worry. That's not what I mean. All right. Can we start the show over again? So that I don't have to talk in circles. We thank our sponsors. So we got a couple of things to talk about today. We've got before we get to the housing issue that I want Lenny to chime in on, for those of you in Lawrence, Lawrence has so much potential. And I'm in my 50s. Since I was a kid, people have always said Lawrence has so much potential. And yet here we are, some 50 years later, Lawrence still just has potential. And it doesn't really seem like Lawrence ever realizes its potential. And so there's something going on in Lawrence right now that kind of encapsulates why Lawrence never gets ahead. So it's a fake scandal. And I know this is going to piss everyone off because people love to jump on a bandwagon and then they marry an issue or marry details of an issue. And then when you tell them, by the way, the media fooled you, that's not real, they don't want to let it go. Like they want to hang on to what they think is something that they can really be flaming out about and be angry with. So the big, huge breaking NBC story this past week, huge. It's Watergate. It's January 6th. It's Hiroshima all over again. There's a big story that got broken that the acting police chief, William Castro in Lawrence, is on leave with pay. You don't say. Well, we talked about that on this show back in, I think, March or April of last year. It's been in the Valley Patriot at least 10 times that I can remember. I know I've blogged about it on Facebook at least 20 times in the last 6 to 8 months. I'm not exactly sure how that's news. So William Castro was appointed acting chief. And while he was acting chief, he took part in a high-speed chase. He heard on the skin that there was a chase going. He was in his car. He's the police chief. He followed the guy. Apparently, that's a violation of Lawrence Police Department policy. I don't know how we went from violating a policy to Watergate. I'm not sure how that happened. But the big breaking story is that the city of Lawrence is paying over $300,000 for police chiefs because we're still paying Roy Vast because we bought out his contract when he left. And Castro came on board. Now, here's how this scandal was manufactured. And again, I know everyone in Lawrence is going to hate me because I know I'm pulling the rug out from underneath what you think is a great scandal that you could talk about in pizza shops and barber shops and around the water cooler. I get it, right? Everybody's vested in Richard Nixon's bad, right? Everybody's vested in Dan Quayle potato. Like everybody's vested in the fact that we learn something that we think is salacious, so we're all running around talking about it feeling like we're important. And I get that. And I'm sorry to have to tell you that none of it is real, because none of it is real. We knew 6 months ago or more that William Castro was put on leave because the Lawrence the police superior officers and their union members targeted William Castro because Castro said publicly on this show, when he became chief, that his number one priority was to root out dirty cops wearing gold shields. Now, he didn't say it that way, but that's what he said in essence. I paraphrase, because I don't have the exact quote. Now, what do I mean by gold shields? Well, you have sergeants, lieutenants, captains, guys in the upper echelon of the police department. They wear gold shields. The regular police patrolmen wear silver shields with their number on it and Lawrence Police logo and all that stuff. So it's the sergeants, lieutenants, captains, chief wear a gold shield. And he said on this show, essentially, that his number one priority was to go after the corrupt cops who were in the upper echelons of the police department. Not an easy task, by the way, even if he stayed. The other thing that he said on this show was that he promised us and the public that there would be transparency in the police department and he would make the police scanner public again. And boy, was that music to my ears. And then the corrupt guys with the gold shields in Lawrence fought back. And as soon as he did anything wrong, any little thing, in fact, Sergeant Mike Samad was caught on video manhandling a woman. On video. It's still up on YouTube right now. Google it. It's up there. He manhandles and wrestles this poor woman to the ground. Gives her a black eye. She's suing. There's all kinds of lawsuits going on. Castro tried to get an internal investigation on Mike Samad. And Mike Samad and all his buddies circled the wagons and decided to target William Castro. So somehow this high-speed chase that William Castro went on is now some kind of felony. Now, for some reason, he's on the front page of Boston newspapers and NBC News and Fox 25. And by the way, all of these news outlets, and I hate to burn my own bridges with some of my friends and some of those other media outlets, but they're also fucking lazy. They look at what NBC wrote, they look at what the Tribune story was, then they just repeat those facts that are in those stories, even if they're not true. So here's what happens. Because of the Superior Officers Union targeting Castro, an investigation takes place, which means he has to go out on pay with leave. You can't give him on leave with pay. You can't put him on leave without pay because he hasn't been convicted of anything. He hasn't been found guilty of anything. He hasn't been determined to have done anything wrong. You have to do an investigation first, so you can't punish him. Everyone knows this. 6 months ago, we talked about it on the show. But yet in Lawrence, everyone's running around pretending this is brand new, like, oh my God, who knew? It's Ripley's, who can believe it? It's Watergate. And now everybody's talking about all these other issues that have nothing to do with it. But follow the progression. Castro gets made temporary chief. He was going to apply to be permanent chief. The superior officers didn't like him because he said on the show he was going after them. They also certainly didn't like him because he was going to bring transparency back to the department and make that scanner public so everyone knows that you guys are lying about your gun stats and you're lying about your crime stats. And everyone knows it. Everyone knows it. Even people in the mayor's office know it. Even people in your own department know it. People on the streets know it. People in the media know it, but no one wants to talk about it. So once again, it falls on me. And by the way, those of you who have known me my entire life, have you ever heard me speak ill of police? Ever. I always took the cop side in Rodney King. That's how pro-cop I am. But when I see what's going on with my father's department that he died for, I'm disgraced. I'm disgraced at what they're doing. So now the same people who complained about William Castro to cause him to go on leave pending an investigation are complaining that he's on leave with pay. That's the complaint. Why are we paying this guy? He's on leave with pay. This is disgraceful. Lenny, can you believe it?
Never could have heard.
It's horrible. We're paying the old chief because we bought him his contract, and we're paying the acting chief who's on leave because we caused an investigation. We complained about him, which caused him to go on leave with pay. And of course, we still need a chief, so we're paying Neil Exponenti to be the acting chief who's actually doing the job. So we're paying 3 chiefs. And it's not because Brian DePina is a bad mayor. It's because the Lawrence superior officers and their union targeted William Castro. Period. End of topic. Like, we can discuss all the details of all the other allegations that are not part of this. But let me tell you what did happen. So when he was put on leave, the mayor hired somebody to do an internal investigation into the allegations of him going on a high-speed chase, which is, by the way, not Watergate. So he didn't shoot anybody, he didn't rape anybody, he didn't steal any money like certain other cops, he didn't flip over a car like other cops, he didn't threaten to shoot up Foxwoods like other cops, who, by the way, I defended all of them, by the way, including Mangan, including all these other guys. I defended all of them. But now you guys are circling the wagons and shooting in on one of your own because he's not one of your own, because you don't want him to be one of your own because he's coming after you. The HR director in Lawrence was fired because there were police officers with gold shields sending emails and text messages and making phone calls trying to skew the results of the investigation against Castro. And we know that because I have the emails. So before you start attacking me on Facebook, be very careful. Be very careful. Before you start calling me propaganda, be very careful. Because according to what I've read and what I've seen and the people I've talked to, the HR director was fired because cops with gold shields were illegally and unduly influencing that investigation. That investigation, by the way, that was illegally leaked to NBC and Fox News so that they could get ahead of the real investigation. So here's what happens. The mayor hires somebody to investigate. The cops taint the investigation, send emails and text messages to the people doing the investigation and the HR director who commissioned the investigation. So the mayor had to stop that investigation. It's not complete. He stopped it because it was tainted and had to hire someone else, I believe Rob Morin, I think it was Rob Morin, to do an independent investigation who knows nobody involved. So Rob Morin's doing his own investigation. And while he's interviewing Mike Samad, that day, they place a story at NBC News and they leak the old investigation that's only a partial investigation because it was tainted and had to be stopped. Do you see what I mean when I say a fake scandal? They manufactured this scandal. And it all goes back to the guys with gold shields in the Lawrence Police Department who don't want the scandal to be public because they don't want you to know how many shootings are really going on. They don't want someone like William Castro because he's going to force the corrupt cops off the department. He's going to go after them and he's going to get rid of them. And it pains me to say this. It really does. And I know we got to get to you. But it pains me to say this. It pains me to say it. But holy good God, people are running around listening to people like Julissa Nunez, the Badge Bunny. The Badge Bunny? She slept with William Green. Are you kidding me? You're listening to her? You listen to some of the other hood boogers that are running around going, see, I told you, there was so much coming, I told you. You don't listen to them? Really? And then when I come out and say, gee, I'm sorry to rain on your parade, but none of this is real, believe me, none of it is real. Everybody gets mad at me. Everybody gets mad at the messenger because I'm pulling the rug out from underneath your good time, kicking somebody else while they're doing. Lenny, do you know how much more money I would make if when the Joe Solomon thing came out, I jumped on the bandwagon with everybody else and said, you're right, Joe Solomon's evil, he's the Antichrist, get rid of him. Same thing with Castro. Castro's evil, he's the Antichrist, it's Watergate, it's Nixon all over again.
No, I was going to say, no one follows what's going on in Lawrence more than you do. And by the way, no one defends cops more than you do.
Nobody.
You're the first one, over and over
I took the
again.
cop side over Rodney King.
I couldn't believe that.
I know nobody could believe it, even
that.
me.
But no, I mean,
Can I get some water on?
Got your finger on the pulse of what's going on in Lawrence, and it seems like there's always something going on in Lawrence.
Yeah.
It's like you said, there's so much potential there. It's always, the future. It's always going to be Lawrence is the destination of the future, and I guess it's always going to be. As
You're
well.
right. It's always going to have potential. But that's it.
It's always going to have potential.
Right.
It's like nuclear fusion is the energy source of the future and always will be.
Right.
It's an old saying, but they just, I don't know what it is. They just can't get their act together.
They can't get out of their own way. They can't get out of their own way.
No.
And it's funny that some of the guys on the department, and I like a lot of these guys, but some of these guys in the department, when they were the ones under fire, when they had bad headlines in the Eagle Tribune and the Boston Globe,
right,
they all came to me and said, hey, Tom, you love us. Can you help out? Here's the real story that they're not telling. And I was the guy getting the shit kicked out of me defending Lawrence cops. I remember getting the shit kicked out of me defending Mike Samad, defending Jimmy Razzo, defending Paul McMillan, defending Rozzi. Oh, my God.
You did that when no one else with the Globe wouldn't defend them?
Wouldn't do it.
Lawrence Eagle Tribune?
Nope.
Not once.
Kicking them while they were all down.
Yeah.
And then when I come out on the side of another cop that they're trying to get rid of, that they're targeting,
right,
suddenly I'm Mr. Propaganda? Well, I wasn't Mr. Propaganda when I was defending your job, when I was calling the mayor saying, listen, the guy's a friend of mine, can we work something out? Can I be a go-between? I know there's lawyers, but I'll be the go-between. You tell me what you want, he'll tell me what he wants, and we'll try and make this work for everybody. It stays out of court. Nobody's paying money for lawyers. Right. Let's just get it done. You're all my friends. I want to help. By the way, what do I get from any of that? Nothing. Nothing. I get nothing out of any of that.
Nothing but grief.
Nothing but grief. The public who is vested in wanting to believe in the scandal hates me. The people involved who want the scandal, who benefit from the scandal itself, hate me. And when it's all over, I usually lose one or two advertisers, right? So, by the way, why am I doing this, right? Why am I defending William Castro when I know I could make so much more money just jumping on the bandwagon and going, isn't this terrible? Throw gas on the fire every day. Hey, he had a parking ticket in 1985. Like, whatever else I can find, let's just do it. Why do I do it? Here's why I do it. It's the reason I got into media. I'm sick of the fucking lies. I was that guy when I was on the Lawrence School Committee in 1997. That people were running around telling stories about and lying about and just making shit up about. And no one would defend me. And so when I left elected office, I said, you know what? If I ever end up on that side of the media, I'm never going to do that. Because these are people's lives that you're talking about. It's fun because we all know Joe Solomon, or at least we all know by name Joe Solomon, or William Castro, or other people like Jim Lyons, or Jeff Deal, other people that have been involved in these some kind of manufactured scandals. And we all think it's fun, and we're going to feel like we know something with our own hypotheses and our own theories. But at the end of the day, these are real people whose families have to hear this, whose friends at work have to hear this, people that do business have to hear this. And it's not fair if it's not true. Now, I'm not saying that William Castro didn't go on a high-speed chase. He did. But it's a policy violation. It's not the end of the world. It's not a felony. It's not something you should go to jail for. I've seen comments on Facebook, Lenny. He should be in jail. For what? Because you don't like him? Because his name is in the public and it gives you a chance to feel important by casting judgment on him. Shame on all of you. And the city councilors who signed that letter, I'm not going to mention you by name. They're all my friends, by the way. And they all took my call. To their credit, they all took my call after the letter. It didn't go well, though. To all of you city councilors who signed that letter, pretending you didn't know, you knew. I talked to you, you knew. I talked to you when it happened, you knew. Everybody knew. This was no secret. I see lack of transparency. How is it lack of transparency? It was in the Valley Patriot. Maybe it's not lack of transparency. Maybe you guys need to read the fucking paper a little bit more. Maybe. Don't just look for your name. Oh, my name's not in here. I'm not going to read it. That's what most elected officials do. You know, because you served in the State House. They'd pour over that Boston Globe looking for their name, and they'd go by 5 great stories that could inform them about things they're going to be voting on. They don't even read it.
The Globe never even really writes about the legislation. They don't call out names. That's the thing. They've got some young writers now that are finally starting to uncover the corruption that's going on and the lack of transparency. They're doing a great job. Matt Stout and what's her name, Hajar, but it stops there.
Right.
And nothing's ever done about it. Sometimes they'll go as far as to say, yeah, we have a corrupt one-party state. We need more, competition in our elections. We have the least competitive elections in the whole country, which is disgraceful, right? These people run unopposed most of the time. And then they stop. Have you ever seen the Globe endorse a single Republican?
No.
In the legislature? I can't remember one time where they actually endorsed a Republican in the legislature. And, it just shows where their loyalty lies. I mean, at the end of the day, the writers, at least on the editorial staff, every one of them is a Democrat, and they want Democrats to win elections, and they don't want Republicans to win any.
And corrupt government officials know that the media is incompetent. They know that if they package up a story and hand it to them, give them the details, a couple of emails or something to make it look good, they'll take a story that happened with a little bit of truth in it, add a whole bunch of lies to it, package it up and give it to the media so they don't have to do any work.
Yeah.
They're going to run with that story 7 days a week. So any corrupt cop, any corrupt firefighter, any corrupt clerk in City Hall, any corrupt government employee, if they can package up a story that looks sexy and the media knows is going to get them hits, true or not true, they're going to run with it. And then, because look at the proof. Did Fox 25 fact check what NBC News published? They did not, because if they had, they would have found out that story was full of shit.
They could have just called you.
They could have just called me.
Found out really fast, right?
But see, if they call me, I say there's no story here, and you don't get hits and likes and views from no story. Although they could do a story, and this is where I would never understood the media. They could do a story about how their rival media outlet got the story wrong, which is what I like to do. But I'm the only one in the media who does that. Everyone else is afraid to do that because everybody in the media knows that their job is not, that they're not long for their job. And so if they're in CBS and they're criticizing NBC News, they might need a job at NBC News someday. CBS might lay them off.
That's it.
So they won't criticize each other, whereas I'm always going to be the Valley Patriot, right? I'm not ever going to be working for anyone but myself, so I'm free to do that. Unfortunately, you've got people in. So think about the and then we have to get to the MBTA stuff. Think about the. It's not a conspiracy in that everyone got together in a room and had a meeting, right?
They don't have to.
It's they all have the same interest.
Right.
The superior officers hate Castro for their reasons. People who don't like Brian DePino, don't want him to get reelected, hate Castro for their reasons. They want to use the Castro scandal to hurt Brian, like Julissa Nunez and Wendy Luzon and all of those people. And then you have people who, for their own personal reasons, want to glom onto this scandal, whether they don't like Castro for other reasons, whether they don't like Brian for other reasons, whether they hate the Lawrence police, or they just like the scandal of the Lawrence police there, right? So they all have competed, and they're all converging on this one story, and they're all perpetuating the same lie, which is that he did something like felonious, that he should be like in jail for this. And the fact is, he's guilty of a high-speed chase that he shouldn't have gone on. It's a policy violation. It should have gotten him a reprimand. And then when he comes up to be permanent chief, maybe, that can be addressed.
Yeah.
Maybe you give him a little bit less money if you decide to hire him. But this was all designed to make sure Castro never becomes the permanent chief. Because all the guys wearing gold shields, they want to be chief. They want to be promoted from within. And my recommendation to the mayor after all this bullshit started was, when he called me and asked me what I thought, I didn't give him anything that I just gave you. He already knows all of it. But I'll tell you the one thing I did tell him. After all this, what you need to do, hire somebody outside the department. Shove it up all of their asses and hire somebody outside the department. Even if you have to get yourself like an Al Sharpton type police chief to come in here and start yelling and screaming about the racism that goes on in that department. Because I've been quiet about the Lawrence police for 30 freaking years because of my father. And I've defended guys that sometimes I should probably not have defended. But I did it because I'm pro-cop and I believe that the cops are right more than they're wrong. I think that's over. I think that ends now. I'm done with it. I'm done with guys disgracing that department. I'm done with guys faking investigations, setting people up, wrestling women to the ground, and pretending that they're heroes. I'm just sick of it. All right, so we got like another 15 minutes to go. Let's talk about this MBTA Act. So I wrote about it in this edition of the Valley Patriot. The MBTA Act, Community Act, whatever it's called, the name doesn't matter because it's all just made up. What the legislature basically did is they passed a law that said municipalities have to zone for multifamily units up to a certain number depending on their population. So in North Andover, I know it's 1,400. I think in Methuen, it's probably a little higher. I think it's like 2,200, but don't hold me to the number. The number's not important. What's important is that the state reps, and the governor have passed this law to force more housing onto communities that a lot of them don't want it. A lot of them don't want more multifamily dwellings in their town. We all know when you have a small town and you add multifamily dwellings, you're inviting more problems, more crime, more infrastructure problems, more stress on the pipes, more stress on the schools, more stress on the police department, certainly more stress on the fire department, streets, garbage pickup. All of that is a cost. And so a lot of towns don't want it. I know the people of Methuen don't want it, but Methuen City Council shoved it down their throat. North Andover didn't want it, but unfortunately they needed a 2/3 vote at town meeting to stop it, and they couldn't. So I know you were in the state legislature. I know you've been following this. I think you've even written about it. What are your thoughts on it?
I got to start off with an apology, a mea culpa, if you will, because I was a state rep when this got passed, and and the manner that it passed is absolutely disgraceful. It's typical Beacon Hill. It was this 3A or MBTA law was slipped into a big, broader economic development package, a package that then Governor Baker wanted. And the Democrats slipped it in, turned it into a bill that was about 1,000 pages long. They dumped it on our desk, say, okay, we're voting on this tomorrow. And that's how things are done on Beacon Hill. And of course, nobody read 1,000 pages.
Right.
No one reads 1,000 pages. But here's the disgraceful
Even your
part.
aides aren't reading all
Oh,
of
my
that.
God. And you know what? You don't have to, because it's 80 to 90% Democrats in the House then and now, and they're just going to do whatever the Speaker tells them to. So when Mariano drops this on your desk, they know they don't have to read this. He's telling you to vote for it, and that's it. So he'll send out his dog whistles like, Mark Cusack or Mike Day to speak about it in favor of it, and that's the dog whistle to say, you're voting for this. And so every single Democrat's going to vote. So it doesn't even matter what Republicans do. And this was thrust upon him. You said some towns didn't want it. No, let me assure you, none of the cities wanted this.
Right.
No, I mean, nobody.
Well, Haverhill wants it.
Well, but nobody in municipal government wants a bunch of know-it-alls on Beacon Hill telling them what to do, dictating what they have to do. Because zoning was always a municipal function, right? You have a planning board, right? And you have a ZBA. And the locals in town, the residents in town, have some say over that, either in town meeting or by electing the people on the planning board, right? And this takes that all away. And it's like, they call it the MBTA zone, but it's going to places like Georgetown, Groveland, Boxford. There's no MBTA. There's not even a bus stop in any of those towns.
Everything in politics is a lie.
Oh,
everything in politics is a lie.
They should have just called it the Eastern Mass Bill, because it's pretty much all of Eastern Mass.
They might as well call it the Martin Luther King Civil Rights Voting Bill.
Then you can't vote against it, right?
Right.
Then you can't vote against it.
You call it that, then everybody has to vote yes, so you're a bad person.
You see people on social media saying this is being shoved down our throats. It is absolutely being shoved down their throats. And, we know we need more housing, okay? This is how this started, and they're using a blunt instrument, like always, on Beacon Hill. We need more housing, and so Beacon Hill is going to stuff this on people and using carrot and stick, but a lot of stick and very little carrot, and that's the problem. And a lot of these, smaller towns, like where I live, Georgetown, Groveland, Ipswich, they run out of water halfway through the summer, and they slap restrictions on it. You can't water your lawn, can't water your garden, can't even wash your car because we don't have enough water for the current population. So what's going to happen when those towns have to build another 1,000 units, another 1,200 units, and 1,200 families move in on top of what you already have?
Right.
And the way the state law is written, the state says, tough bleep, that's on you, town. You got to build more water infrastructure. You got to build a filtration plant, or you got to drill more wells.
Right.
And that's how it works. And that's the problem with this law. There's way too much stick, not enough carrot. And if they wanted this to work, they would have state reps, state senators working with municipal officials to see what the city or town needs in order to absorb more people. Where can we build it? And give the town some say and a little direction in where it goes and what it looks like. But this does not do that. It just says you have to set aside a certain number of acres for multifamily with a minimum of 15 units per acre. Now imagine something like 15 units per acre going into Newbury or West Newbury. And this is what's being forced on those small towns. And awful.
And what's even worse is that, again, it's the lies. It's not so much what the legislature does. It's the freaking lies. Whether it's at the local level with your local city councils, whether it's the state level with an issue like this. So State Rep Adrienne Ramos shows up at North Andover town meeting, which I'm surprised she even shows up to anymore.
She showed up?
Yeah, she doesn't show up to anything
that's
else.
news. Okay.
She doesn't show up for half the votes. but she showed up for that. And what she lied by omission. She didn't necessarily lie. She said, if we don't pass this in its current form, we're going to lose millions of dollars in grant money because that's how the state passed the law that if you don't do this, you're going to lose grant money. What she didn't say, and what Joe Finn said, and it resonated when he said it, it reverberated, like it echoed in my brain for days after that. He said, I called the legislature, I talked to the lawyers in the legislature. Right. He said, we can get around this by zoning where there already is multifamily units and count those units toward this and not lose any grant money, not lose any funding. That's not true. That's not true.
Well, so I'll tell you right now.
So what did the voters do? The voters said, well, if we're going to lose the grant money, and it failed. It didn't fail by a lot, but it fails, right? So now the measure to stop it failed, okay? So now North Andover is facing at least 1,400 more families in the next 10 years, and we're going to have to, all these conservationists, all these Democrats who pretend they care about the environment, they care about conservation, we're now going to be taking acres and acres of land in North Andover and building on them for low-income housing. And by the way, we all know what this is all really about because we've needed housing for decades.
Oh, yeah.
This is about housing illegal aliens. It's about taking illegal aliens from other countries who are not supposed to be here and housing them in places like North Andover because they're all going to vote Democrat and making sure that Republicans never have a shot at winning a suburb ever again. And if you think that I'm crazy about that, you think I'm lying about that, or I'm being hyperbolic about that, just look it up. Look it up and look and see how this has worked in other states that call it something other than the MBTA Act. They call it something else, Martin Luther King Civil Rights Act. Yeah. You know, the I Love Babies Act, like whatever name that they give it so that if you vote against it, you look like a bad person.
Well, Joe Finn was right, and here's a dirty little secret. A lot of cities, like I said, no city or town wants this imposed on them. So what a lot of them are doing are, okay, we have to choose a certain number of acres in a certain part of town to do this, and they're going to pick a lot of them have already done this. They pick a section of town that already has apartment buildings, or already has
Peabody
office
did
buildings.
That.
Exactly, because they know that the owners of those properties are not going to knock down an existing apartment building to put up more, because there's no gain there.
Right.
And same with the office buildings. I mean, unless an office building becomes really old and decrepit, it's probably not going to be torn down and turned into housing.
Right.
So why even buy? What's the whole purpose of this bill if they know that that's what's going to happen? I mean, they want to build 200,000 more. That's what they think is going to happen, 200,000 more units in Massachusetts. I'd be shocked if they got even half that or even a fraction of that. It's not going to happen. It's just because of the way it's written. And like I said, there are so many different ways the state could have gone about. It just requires a little bit more communication and coordination between state and municipal government.
But you need more honesty, though. I mean, if our state rep, and, you know, listen, I don't dislike her as a person. She's a nice person. She's been here on the show, all right? But if she had just gotten up and been honest about it and served the needs of the town that voted for her, not the needs of her party that's pushing the agenda in Boston, then North Andover could have gotten the grant money. They could have had their cake and eaten it too. One of the few times you can do that, this is one of them. And she ripped that away from the taxpayers, and she ripped that away from the voters. And it's not just there. In Methuen, they pulled the same crap. In Methuen, Nick DeZoglia was going to vote no and admitted at a public meeting that he got a phone call from the lieutenant governor. All right? So you've got your state office holders are browbeating local city councilors into voting for this. Why? Why do they want 2,200 more illegal alien families or low-income families in Methuen? Why? Why do they want that? Well, you know, Methuen's one of those towns that sometimes it goes Democrat, sometimes it goes Republican. 2,200 low-income families fixes that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
2,200 low-income families are not voting Republican in the next election.
No, I don't know her, but she should be representing her voters. She should be hearing what they're saying, hearing their concerns, and voting accordingly. And it's instead what it sounds like, and I don't know, like I said, but what it sounds like is she's just towing the party line.
Right.
What her governor's telling her to do and what her party leaders, what the speaker, Ron Mariano, is telling her to do. And that's wrong. That's not her job. She works for the constituents of North Andover, Boxford, Methuen that she's got, and I think even her district goes all the way up to Amesbury.
Yeah, she's got North Andover, Boxford, Georgetown, Groveland, West Newbury, I think.
It's crazy. And so she should be listening to those constituents, okay?
Yep.
And if she talks to the people in Groveland and West Newbury, they're not going to be telling her, oh yeah, Rep, we want this in our town. No, they're going to tell the opposite.
Right.
They're going to tell the opposite. And by the way, in North Andover, there's already hundreds of units going up. Already. Out behind the airport, out behind China Blossom.
They want to put another 600 units on Main Street. I live on Main Street in North Andover, right? I'm on Main Street. I'm at 75 Main Street.
Oh, the traffic is hell now, isn't it?
Today, if you try to get down Main Street at 1 in the afternoon, 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon, it is gridlock. I have to go the back roads just to get back to my office. And then, God forbid, you've got a funeral from St. Michael's.
Oh,
forget it. The whole day is gone, right? Now you want to add 600 more. You want to add even 200 more families, even 100 more families on Main Street. I mean, how much more can... And here's the other thing. I love Phil DeCollegiero. He's a friend, so I'm not bad-mouthing him as a person. But Phil and guys like... who's the other guy that ran... Chris Nobili? And some of these other guys that were on the Board of Selectmen that vote for all this increase in housing, when they leave the Board of Selectmen, they screw. They don't live in North Andover anymore. Phil DeCollegiero is not even in Massachusetts anymore. He's in New Hampshire pushing his liberal stuff. But he doesn't have to live with the effects of what he voted for when he was on the board. Chris Nobili moved to Maine after he left the board. In fact, he moved to Maine while he was still on the board.
Yeah, but Phil's not in part of this. He works in the auditor's office with DeZoglio.
Right, but what I'm saying is he was a Board of Selectmen in North Andover who voted for all of this housing. He wanted the whole Royal Crest thing. And so all of these people in these towns that are voting at the local level to accept all this baloney, when they leave office, not all of them, but a vast majority of them, leave office and then screw out of town. So they don't have to live with the effects of all the things that they voted on. And that doesn't sit well with me. Like, listen, I'm not bad-mouthing Phil. I'm using him as an example because it's everywhere. You look at it in Methuen. Billy Manzi's one of the few people that he ran for office and he stayed in Methuen, right?
Manzi, yeah.
A lot of other people, they run for office, they're out the door. You look at a lot of people in Lawrence run for office, they're out the door, right? Where's Mary Claire Kennedy? Does she live in Lawrence? How about Patty Dowling? She's in Florida. Right? Kevin Sullivan, good friend of mine, lives in Amesbury. Mike Sullivan just moved to Salisbury. Willie Lantigua, I think he's in the Dominican Republic, but he comes back once in a while. Dan Rivera stuck around. But my point is the majority of them don't. The majority of these people at the local level, you count on them. You think that they have the best interest of the town in their head. But most of them are thinking of getting the hell out once they finish changing your neighborhoods and your environment.
Well, let's be clear, though. I'm not like I'm defending anybody here, but Phil, I think he has a young family, little kid, so maybe just moved into a bigger house.
I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I love him.
But what he did when he was on the select board was what a lot of towns need to do. We do need more housing.
Right.
This state is in big trouble if we don't build more housing. It's true because people are aging and staying in place. I'm one of them. I'm in my 60s now, and my kids are gone, and I stayed in my house. And that's not contributing to our economy if we don't have younger families coming into here. And we do need that. We need workers, and companies can't hire workers if the houses are full of old people like me, okay? And so Phil, I think, was trying to do the right thing as a select person when he was increasing housing. But at least when it's done that way, it's done locally. So you voted for your Board of Selectmen, right? And he probably didn't lie about it. He said we need more housing.
Right.
But that's the way it should be done.
Right.
It shouldn't be done by some mandate, by a bunch of know-it-alls down on Beacon Hill who think they know what's best for your city or town. Because let me tell you, they don't. They don't know what's better.
And they don't care. They don't care what's better for you. They care about pushing their agenda that their donors tell them to do.
Your local guys and your planning boards, they know the town, and they know they have their fingers on the pulse of the town as well. And they know what their neighbors want and don't want. Now, every kind of new housing gets opposition. Believe me, I've built a lot of real estate, industrial buildings, medical office, residential. Every single project had opposition, guaranteed. But when you work with the neighbors to maybe put up, some trees or whatever, or better lighting, you can work it out. But when you have this mandate, this blunt instrument from the state, like this MBTA law, it does not work. Right. It's just bad policy.
I would be okay if they wanted to add more elderly housing. I would be okay if they wanted to add more single-family housing. Get rid of all this community preservation crap and put in single-family homes that are going to pay taxes and not be a drain on the system. That would be great. Elderly housing, not a drain on the system because you have no kids in the schools, you have less use of the water, less use of sewer. Elderly people tend to not be arrested all as much, so that they don't have that problem, right? So I would be okay if they were doing smart housing developments that were going to contribute to the town and not suck resources from the town. But when you're building low-income housing or you're building housing for immigrants, which really is a catchword for illegal aliens.
Yeah.
These are people that are going to be draining the town. That doesn't mean they're bad people, but by virtue of their economic status, they're draining the town resources: police, fire, schools, infrastructure, water, sewer.
No, the impact is huge because it's not like a dozen single-family houses.
Right.
It's like 100 units,
Right.
all at once.
Right.
That means not just 100 people; it's 100 units. It means 100 families.
Right.
You could have 2 cars for every unit.
Yep.
Now you got hundreds more cars on the road, and a bad traffic situation gets immensely worse.
Right.
It does. And by the way, we moved to these small towns to get away from that. I live in Georgia. I came from Woburn, and everyone in my neighborhood came from Somerville, Everett, Cambridge, places where, they turned into big cities with a lot of traffic and the other problems that you mentioned. And so we moved to these places to get away from that. And that should be honored. That should be a little bit more respected by the people in the State House.
Yep.
And it's not. It's just not. They think that every town should just end up looking like Somerville.
Right. Well, that guarantees that Democrats always win.
Yeah, it helps them. It helps them. No doubt
they
about
win
it.
the cities.
Yeah.
Because people who live in cities don't have as much a stake in the game as people who are in the.
No, it's true.
Yes. Oh, I thought you were calling me. Are we up? Oh, we are up. We're over. All right. So, what is the solution? The solution is if you have a community out there that is going to be voting on this, look at what Peabody did. Look up what Joe Finn tried to do in North Andover. You can rezone and keep your grant money coming in without adding new housing by zoning where you already have multifamily units, where you have mixed use housing. And you should reach out to people like Joe Finn. You should be reading the Valley Patriot or reaching out to somebody like Lenny Mirra, who'd be happy to help you out.
Absolutely.
Right? It would be nice if Methuen had gotten their act together, but Lieutenant Governor makes a phone call and Nick Bisoglio flips like a pancake. But he's got to change his mind, and that was the end of that. All right, so let's we have gotten okay. So let's start saying goodbye. I want to read our sponsors, but one quick announcement: the Valley Patriots 21st anniversary bash is going to be March 28th. We've already announced that. We're going to announce it again. It's going to be at the Elks Club in Lawrence. And we have already secured one of our guest speakers, Francisco Urena, Purple Heart Marine, former Secretary of Veterans Affairs for the Commonwealth, and former Lawrence Mayor, currently the president of the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce. Mike Sullivan is going to be presenting an award. Lenny Mirra will also be there. And also, I haven't announced it on Facebook, but Diana DiZoglio will be our keynote speaker this year, which is great. Our state auditor, she's gaining some ground. So thank you, Chrissy. Thank you, Lenny, for being here. It seems like we do a 40-minute show, but it feels like a 5-minute show.
Oh, my God, that flew by.
Doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to find a way to make this work. Thank our sponsors, Century 21 McLennan Real Estate, Stadium Chiropractic, W3O, and Chris's Barbershop. Free shout-out to attorney Paul Lambert, my good buddy at Lambert Randone. He's a good guy. He does wills and trusts and family law. You should reach out to him. Doug Mercuria, the Mercuria Law Office of Prime Insurance, Pleasant Valley Landscaping Contractors, Clear Path for Veterans New England, AFC Urgent Care, EIS Investigation and Gun Training, Marston and Son Construction, the Zanny Pesci Law Office at Century 21, McLennan Real Estate, and Melvin Taylor for having such great music. And, of course, Christy, who's our fine producer.
Aw, thanks.
So I'm not going to give them the bad news just yet, but next week we're going to do it. We're going to see if we can work something out with the big guys. Dave in today? No, he's not. All right, we'll give him a call. Melvin Taylor says you got to go home, so go home already.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.